What kind of prison hides the real criminals behind the uniforms? When inmates at a women's correctional facilities stopped speaking during inspections, Warden Catherine Monroe knew something was wrong. Whispers of midnight screams, broken spirits, and guards who looked too smug for comfort, but no one dared talk. Until one terrified kitchen worker risked everything and told her, "Ma'am, it's your officers. They're hurting the women, and they say if anyone talks, they disappear." So what did the warden do? She went undercover as a prisoner, and what she uncovered, hidden rooms, unthinkable abuse, and a powerful officer's disgusting secret, shattered her world and shook the entire justice system. Why were women silenced for years? Who inside the system protected the predators? And how far would Catherine go to protect the ones who'd already been forgotten? Don't blink. What happens next will leave you breathless. It was 10:45 p.m. when Warden Catherine Monroe shut off the last hallway light and locked her office door. She paused, heard it first as a faint, shuddering breath, then the sound of kitchen boots on polished tile. Marcus, the night cook, appeared at the edge of her view, face pale. He nodded, wrists twisting in silent urgency. Catherine slid the door open a crack. "They said you'd want to know," Marcus whispered. "They're hurting them, Warden. Inmates. The night shift." Catherine's heart clenched, blood rushing through her temples. She lunged forward. "Show me." They moved down silent corridors to the women's wing. Normally the corridors thrummed with restless whispers, shuffling feet, clinks of cell doors. But tonight, silence. A hush that felt wrong, worse than noise. Catherine pressed her thumb to the imprint code. The inner lights glowed blue. She beckoned Marcus inside. "Which door?" she asked, voice a combo of steel and dread. He stepped forward, paused at cell 23B. "This one." They peered in. Everything seemed normal. Bunk beds, a small sink, a single fluorescent bulb. But something darker lurked in the air. A sagging blanket. A bruise like a bruise that was still warm. Fresh. Catherine caught her breath. "Who?" "Marisol Alvarez," Marcus said, voice tight. "She tried to tell her roommate, said one of the guards made her dance for him. A senior officer said nobody listens." Tears gathered in Catherine's throat. Anger, guilt, fear. How had she missed this? She'd walked these halls only hours ago. The corner of her mouth tightened. She closed the cell door gently. "Lock this wing down. No one in or out without me," she commanded. Marcus nodded and vanished down the hallway. Catherine stood in there, alone in bed. The hum of the security camera above sounded deafening. She pressed her finger to the wall. The chill of stainless steel under her skin jarred her. Every instinct screamed, "Get help. Call the Department of Justice immediately." But what if Marisol or others retaliated? What if they were terrified? Somebody would disappear. Catherine closed her eyes, wrestled with fear. This wasn't about protocol. This was about lives. 10 minutes later, she met with her chief of investigations, Daniel Reeves, in a small security briefing room. His face was drawn, tense. "Tell me what you have," she said, voice calm but urgent. Daniel exhaled. "Marisol has bruises, visible, none should be unseen, but guards filed it as inmate assault. We even suspect one of the night shift officers, Lieutenant Barnes." Catherine shook her head. "He's been with the prison for 12 years. Daniel nodded. "He's untouchable, but others, wives, kids, maybe they can talk. But tonight they're afraid." Her jaw clenched. "This ends tonight. I want every camera tape, motion log, shift roster." "And?" Daniel asked. "I want you to trace every inmate on that wing in the past month. We declare a facility-wide internal investigation. But quietly, no fronts, no alerts." Daniel leaned forward. "We're walking into fire." She flattened her palm on the table. "I'm walking through fire. For them." As the clock struck midnight, Catherine slipped into a supply office. She left her badge behind, donned a plain black jumpsuit, pinned on the name tag, Rebecca Hill. Her ID card disabled. She opened the bin of inmate-issued shoes. Her own shoes had to go. She checked her reflection in the dirty window. The face looking back, A woman on a mission, but secret, known to no one now. No warden, just Rebecca. She slipped out, pocket stuffed with a mini recorder and her phone. The red light on the recorder glinted under the exit sign. She pressed record. 20 feet ahead, the cell doors clicked shut behind another guard. Catherine positioned herself near the kitchen door, her entry point for the women's block. She slipped inside. The hall felt alive in its silence. She saw magnitude in empty bunks, the dim pool of a plasma TV someone lorded over. Each cell passed like a bruised memory. In cell 27A, she lined up her shoes, only to find they were too big. She sank to her knees, pushing at the mattress springs, bracing for what came tomorrow. Another guard passed, eyeballing her. She lowered her head and shuffled faster. In the yard by the kitchen, the night cooks covered meals. She approached a small group of female inmates waiting for soup under a motionless guard tower. She asked quietly, "Marisol Alvarez?" A slender woman with long curls and haunted eyes turned, fear etched across her face. "Yeah, that's me," she whispered. Catherine blinked, voice soft. "Rebecca Hill. I'm new." She offered a small bowl of soup. "How come you look like you've seen ghosts?" Marisol swallowed hard. "Ever heard of Lieutenant Barnes?" she asked, eyes squeezed shut. Catherine nodded slowly. Barnes, Lieutenant Roderick Barnes, majoritarian bully, rumored to break them down each shift. Marisol looked around, swallowing. "He's got a locked room. Night shift. Something he calls therapy. We cry. He laughs." The words hit Catherine's gut like a battering ram. She held out her recorder. "If someone talks, you'll be safe. I can protect you." Marisol stared with suspicion. "Why would you risk—" Catherine interrupted gently. "Because I wear no uniform tonight, but I still breathe as their warden." Marisol's tears fell. She nodded slowly. "Tonight I saw— I'll show you." She glanced down the corridor. "Come." They crept into the shadowed wing. Marisol led her to a back hallway. Thicker steel door, no nameplate. Catherine's pulse pounded. Shadows loomed. Catherine inched forward, ear pressed to the door. Faint whimpering, a door half open. She pushed slightly. Inside, 2 guards seated a girl, their prisoner. Barnes stood next to them, tall, dominating. He wore a smirk that blurred fear, power gone violent. He barked, "Dance!" The girl, a small woman near tears, stood trembling. She managed a few steps under direction. Then she collapsed. Barnes spat, "You let your father beat you at home? Now dance for me." The other guard laughed. Catherine's blood boiled. She stepped forward, record blinking. Barnes froze. "Who the hell are you?" She clamped her jaw. "I'm Rebecca Hill. I'm done dancing." Barnes snorted. "You want to dance with me? I'll make sure you never—" He twigged. He looked closer. The recorder. The eyes beneath shadows. Catherine raised her yank. "You talk about disappearing people, you care who they are." Barnes sneered. "This is my hallway, sister." Marisol gasped behind Catherine. Fear incarnate. Catherine dropped the mask. She ripped off the ID, munched it in one bite. "I am Warden Monroe," she bellowed. Her voice cracked with revelation. The girl slumped to the floor in shame and relief. "You're under arrest," she declared. But Barnes stepped forward, fist raised. Before he could strike, alarms burst. Doors locked. Flashing lights. Reinforcements flooded in, Daniel, Helen, other officers. Barnes froze, the moment crystallized between violent intent and justice. Catherine took a breath, voice roaring with controlled fury. "Lieutenant Barnes, I'm arresting you for abuse, kidnapping, breach of trust. You have the right to remain silent." The camera panned upward as Barnes was cuffed, eyes blazing with hatred and disbelief. A female inmate, who had watched terrified, rushed into Catherine's arms. Catherine held her in public for the first time, without shame, without mask. The guardsman was led away. Marcus came forward, phone in hand, tears pitting across his face. "We got you on camera, all of it." Catherine nodded, wiping her own tears. "You're safe. They're going to pay. For every broken heart, every stolen voice." Yet even as the wing filled with shock and relief, Police officers stepped forward. Catherine's tablet beeped. News alert. Family members of Barnes had just filed a restraining order. A media storm had begun. Catherine locked eyes with Marcus. "Something tells me," she whispered. He nodded, voice soft. "This is only the beginning." As she escorted the prisoners to a safe wing, the question launched into the night. If the system's top enforcer could be a predator, how deep did the corruption run? And who would still be safe tomorrow? The cameras survived, and another whisper began. How many Warden wannabes would emerge, and who would dare walk her path next? A shuddering quiet, the night's rescue done, but somewhere someone resumed their part. The whispers returned, because once you open the door to truth, you never know who steps through next. As dawn cracked over the prison walls, Catherine, no longer Rebecca, returned to her office as Warden Monroe. The bruises on her forearm throbbed, but nothing compared to the ache in her heart. She'd rescued Marisol and countless others from Barnes's terror. But dawn didn't feel like victory. It felt like a reckoning. She locked her office and headed to the inmate records room. Daniel and Helen were already reviewing surveillance footage. Marisol sat beside them, trembling, tears still raw. Daniel paused the screen, showing Barnes dragging the victim into the locked room. Helen paused, handing Catherine a stack of printed frames. "These are direct violations. We've got enough for felony charges." Catherine traced a finger down a photo of Marisol, eyes red. "Make sure every word and image is preserved. We're building an airtight case." Her voice cracked, not with fatigue, but emotion. Anger mixed with a fire born of injustice. Daniel nodded, glancing at her as if to ask, "Is she okay?" Catherine swallowed. "I'm fine." Lies. She still carried the weight, but outwardly she stood as unbreakable as granite. They moved into the hallway. Guards were rerouting inmates to a temporary wing nearby, away from Barnes. Scared murmurs drifted through the corridors, a sense of cautious hope. Catherine approached Marisol. Gently, she touched her shoulder. "You did great." Marisol nodded, voice quiet. They're coming for me." Catherine clenched her teeth. "We'll keep you safe. I swear." Later, Catherine stood before the inmates in the new wing. Women formed a circle, uncertain eyes flicking between fear and hope. She addressed them. "I know you've been silenced. That wall's faced you like jailers too. But none of that will stand, not anymore. We will protect you. If you speak, you are safe. I'm sorry this took so long." Tears trailed as one woman whispered, "Thank you." Another looked at Catherine with relief and disbelief. The light in their eyes reminded Catherine of her promise. Her mission had just begun. That evening, media swarmed the prison grounds. Paparazzi, news vans, and helicopters churned the air. Burns inside Catherine's chest. The realization that every word she'd say tomorrow would be broadcast live. Every pledge she made would ripple outside. Stakes suddenly sky high. Inside her office, Catherine reviewed her speech for the press conference. She read aloud, voice trembling slightly. "Today, we entered the shadows to expose horrors none should suffer. Our investigation is underway, and offenders will answer." Daniel entered. "The press wants to know why you waited so long. They're painting this as a cover-up." Catherine closed her laptop with a controlled snap. "They can report anything. They don't know what's coming." She paused. "We have surveillance. We have inmates willing to talk. We have prosecutors on standby. Let them print cover-up. We're doing the right thing." Daniel shot a hesitant smile. "Does the board approve?" Catherine shook her head. "They're nervous." Her voice was low, defiant. "They'd rather cover it up. I won't let that happen." Behind her, Helen stepped in. "We've set safety protocols for the inmates, and we've alerted the DOJ. Federal agents are embedding tonight." Her presence was a reminder. They were no longer functioning under local jurisdiction. They were part of something much bigger. Late that night, Catherine sat alone on the rooftop terrace. The wind tugged at her hair. She liked this, not the helicopter blade of reporters, but this silence tinged with tension. She stared at the prison compound, lights spiking out from the cell blocks. Her phone vibrated. It was a photo. Barnes, eyes red, smirking, cornered. Next to him, another guard, corrections officer Alvarez. Barnes's partner? Another predator? No name on the image. Just silence. Catherine's stomach twisted. She knew the next enemy wasn't just Barnes. It was the network he thrived in. She locked her phone, returned to her office desk. She reached into a drawer. Inside was Barnes's case file, plus slips of other names, dates, sightings. She added a new one, Alvarez, and maybe more. Her heart raced. She knew the answers lay buried, and she would unearth every one. Morning press lined the hallway. Dozens of phone cameras peered out. Catherine stepped up to the podium, face calm, but eyes blazing with purpose. Today marks a shift, she began steadily. We have documented evidence of abuse. We've taken action and removed those responsible. We will not just prosecute, our policies will change. Our appointments are gone, and any leader who expected me to look away will be held accountable. Questions blazed. One asked, "Can you guarantee no more abuse?" She responded firmly, voice unwavering. "I guarantee this, if you're here to do harm, I will find you." Another reporter asked, "Were you aware earlier? Why didn't you act?" She paused, heart pounding. "I want you to believe this. My responsibility is absolute. I see now I failed them. But I'm here, I'm accountable, and no one will suffer tonight." A sudden hush. Reporters scribbled, muttered. Cameras clicked. Catherine stepped down, sweat gleaming on her brow. Daniel approached. "Standing ovation," he said quietly. "And coverage everywhere. Socials are lighting up." She looked at him. "Good, but we need action, not applause." Helen joined. She looked at Catherine with worry. "Once we bring Alvarez in, we'll have Barnes's entire crew. But word is Alvarez has connections outside." Catherine's heart skipped. "Connections with who?" Helen hesitated. "I don't know yet, but powerful people." A flash of light, the press parted as Barnes's lawyer approached Catherine. "Madam Warden, I must warn you, my client's family will sue the department for violation of rights. We demand your removal." Catherine lifted her chin. "We will answer every legal claim, but not because I'm scared." The lawyer looked stunned. He muttered, "Wait till you see what my firm knows. Your name, for everything, you didn't build that reputation." Barnes's lawyer walked away among murmurs. Catherine steadied herself. Something darker was brewing, and she could almost taste it. But she'd trained for this. She was ready. Back at her desk, she opened a secure message from Helen. "High-level intel suggests a guard named Alvarez met with an unknown man last night near Cell Block C, location ID and partial photo included." Catherine clicked the attachment. The face was obscured, but something eerie and danger-lit gloom. Catherine sat up. This wasn't about corners of a corrupt night shift. This was a conspiracy reaching higher, maybe far beyond corrections officers. She tapped her temple. "They're playing chess," she whispered. "It's on me to call checkmate." She leaned back, staring at her ceiling. Then resolute, she shut it off, the corner of her lip trembling. The phone rang again, this time from Marisol. She answered. The woman's voice shook. "They want me back in Barnes's block, tonight. Alvarez said orders came down. They want silence." Catherine's blood froze. She grabbed her jacket. "Stay put. Don't speak to anyone. I'm coming." When she hung up, she turned to the window. The prison yard gaped below, the storming clouds reflected in the floodlights. Her breath hitched. Tomorrow's raid wouldn't just indict men. It would draw out the predators hiding in plain sight. But would they kill first? Or would she have enough time? The screen fades. What will Catherine risk? And who will face her wrath next? As dawn broke, Warden Catherine Monroe drove through the prison gates, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. She had just received a chilling call from Marisol. Orders were now in place to return her to Barnes's block. The same man who'd tortured her. The same place where nightmares lived behind steel doors. Her stomach twisted with dread. Marisol needed protection. Now. Inside, the prison hummed with early shift activity. The air carried heat, sweat, tension. Cameras blinked above corridors. Catherine moved swiftly toward the temporary wing Marisol was in. Her mind raced. She could set up surveillance, Have officers guard every inch, but fear gnawed that it might not be enough. Each step echoed in her chest. She reached Marisol's cell just as the buzzer summoned guards. Catherine pulled Marisol close. "You're not going back in there," she hissed. Marisol's eyes filled again. "They'll come for me, Warden." Catherine took her hand. "I swear, I'll never let them." She summoned Daniel and Forsyth to a small briefing room. "Alvarez is coordinating with Barnes, and this has higher approval. We have to act decisively now." Daniel slid a printout across the table, a photo taken last night. Alvarez meeting a well-dressed stranger outside the yard. "We don't know who he is, but this looks corporate. Maybe someone from the board or donors." Catherine's jaw tightened. Enemies in suits can do more damage behind closed doors than any inmate. They plotted an escort operation. Hidden cameras, undercover guards disguised as kitchen on staff, Marisol shielded by a secure block. Catherine would personally oversee the transfer. It would need to look normal, but run cold and precise. A surgical strike. Just as plans were being finalized, Helen barged in, face pale. "Warden, you have to see this." On her tablet, a live camera feed showed Marisol's cell block. Only the feed flickered between shots. Something was wrong. Alvarez just walked by, with no clearance, carrying a dark duffel bag. A cold panic gripped Catherine. "What's he doing with a duffel?" Helen zoomed on the image, a glint of metal in Alvarez's hand. Catherine's pulse thundered. "He's planting something." They rushed to the surveillance hub. Forsyth entered a manual override and grabbed every videotape of Alvarez's movements. They found evidence. At 2:37 a.m., Alvarez moved into the block while the cameras were disabled, slipping a small duffel under a floor panel near Marisol's bunk, then left. No audio, just shadow and intent. Catherine swallowed hard. They're framing her. They weren't rescuing Marisol to save her. They were baiting her with a setup. Barnes and Alvarez intended Marisol to be returned and incriminated with weapon possession, giving them a pretext to isolate and silence her permanently. The realization hit hard. Emotions surged, betrayal, sorrow, rage. She clenched her fist. "We have to remove her completely from this prison, this state. It's her only chance." Across the table, Forsyth said quietly, "That's going to need federal-level intervention. FBI, maybe DOJ. Are you ready to escalate this fully?" Catherine took a breath. "I promised her safety. I'm not walking away." Her voice held razor determination. They locked eyes. "Proceed." And they did. Hours later, under veil of night, they executed their plan. A black SUV waited just outside the secure perimeter. Catherine personally escorted Marisol out, draped in civilian clothes, escorted through service corridors. Cameras were erased, guards diverted. They reached the back gate. Forsyth pulled it open. But just as they were about to step out, an alarm blared, floodlights strobing. The gate slammed shut. Sparks flew in the lot lights. The SUV doors jolted shut in echoing booms. Voice from a hidden speaker. "Warden Monroe, step away from the inmate." The voice was authoritative, familiar. It crackled, booming over a secure line. Catherine recognized it before she registered the damage. It was the prison's internal PA, not supposed to be active. A stream of guards and officers, some masked, others wearing the prison guard donning with silver badges, emerged from hidden doors, led by Barnes and Alvarez. Alvarez holding the dark duffel. Barnes pointed a pistol at Marisol's head. "You're violating every rule tonight." His voice a cold cascade. "I'm giving you one final chance, not to look for her, not to ruin us." Barnes's eyes were wild, comfortable in power. Marisol squeezed Catherine's hand. Catherine stepped forward, keeping her voice calm but loud. "Let her go." Barnes sneered. "You're one warden." His eyes flicked at the assembled guards. "Not the last one." He scanned the bag, zipped open it, pulled out a small, serrated blade in a small envelope. "We found this under her bed this morning." He raised the envelope. It bore photographs of Marisol and senior prison staff she'd spent time with, including footage from hidden cameras while she slept. Messages, evidence, all implicating her and implicating you, all submitted to the CBI. the Central Bureau, a state-level investigative force. Barnes patted his holstered gun. Your trust in me blinded you. You forgot who runs this place. All hell froze. Catherine could taste her pulse in her throat. Then she spoke, painstakingly calm. You filmed her? Without her knowing? Under her headboard? Bag full of film? She glared. It would take more than her badge to crack this case. It would take fanatical evidence. You forced her into possession of illicit evidence to frame her against state law, federal regulations. That's criminal conspiracy at multiple levels. Barnes laughed. We followed your protections, Warden. That's your job. Protecting them. We're doing our job, protecting the system. He looked at the guards behind him. Orders came from above. That's how we control this place. Catherine spoke again, stricter now. Name them. He paused. Do you really want that? As if she just lit a match in a powder keg. Their tempers flared. Catherine raised a finger. She was determined, and she was furious. Yes! Alvarez tensed. Barnes took a step back, the pistol unwavering at Marisol. Suddenly, Catherine nodded. She turned and yelled, Now! In the blink of an eye, Helen emerged from behind the parked SUV holding a megaphone. FBI! You are surrounded! Drop your weapons! Forsyth and other shadow guards emerged from behind cover, weapons trained. Barnes glared. He ripped Marisol from Catherine's grasp, cleared a path, vaulted into a waiting administrative van. Their headlights flicked to life. The van sped away through the block gate, leaving a column of dust. Alvarez yelled something at Catherine. Silver bullets glinted toward them. But Forsyth moved first. A single shot shattered the rear window, sending Alvarez crashing to the ground. Marisol sobbed, thrust backward. Catherine dropped to her knees beside her, voice shaking. You're safe. They can't hurt you. Barnes's van screeched into the night, gone. Alvarez lay unconscious. The prison entrance erupted with FBI agents and state troopers. Later, at the emergency war room set up in the warden's conference hall, Catherine stood in front of media, most of them officials and personnel, not press. Daniel, Forsyth, Helen flanked her. On screen, satellite footage showed the van racing away. We are pursuing suspects, a senior agent assured. Now public pressure surged, not for Barnes alone, but for the whispers above him. Whispers of board members, of donors, of politicians connected to the orders from above. Catherine's voice rang, I will not have my facility or my staff blackmailed by thugs in uniform. These men conspired to frame an abused woman, and who knows how many others. They thought they had me watching the cameras. They were wrong. Her words clenched iron into her voice. She looked at Marisol, safe with Helen. That had to be her justice. In the aftermath's hush, Catherine retreated to her office, barreling the door behind her. She placed Marisol's personal bag on her desk. It had been seized from Barnes's vehicle. Passports, burner phones, large untraceable cash deposits, and a high-fashion business card from the governor's spouse's fundraiser committee. A memory flashed. Last year, the prison received a donation for inmate welfare, paid by a PAC tied to the governor's spouse. The board thanked the donor. Film and photos were hidden inside Marisol's bag. A chill raced down her spine. Then her phone buzzed with a secure message. Governor's office acknowledged we need to shut this unit down pending investigation. She sank into her chair. Someone had been controlling this silently. But who? In the growing darkness, Catherine Monroe allowed herself only one thought. They had pulled Marisol out of the wolf's den, but the wolf was still loose, and the pack was waiting in the shadows. She stared at the bag, feeling its weight, not just flesh and paper, but political power, corruption that reached straight to the Capitol steps. She rose and stepped into the hall. Who is the real mastermind behind this cover-up, and how far will Catherine go to bring them to justice? The rain had started again, a slow, cold drizzle pattering against the steel window frames of Catherine Monroe's office. Outside, the prison yard looked like a ghost town, silent, wet, thick with tension. But inside the warden's desk was a battlefield of evidence. Photos, hard drives, cash-stuffed envelopes, and a single business card embossed with the name of the state governor's spouse. Catherine stared at it as if it were a lit fuse. The evidence had been recovered from the duffel Barnes tried to escape with. It wasn't just a frame-up against Marisol anymore. It was money laundering, political funding, and dirty deals embedded in the bones of the correctional system. Barnes was just the match. Someone higher up had built the pyre. She took a breath and called Helen. "Did you run the donor code?" Catherine asked, her voice quiet, calculated. Helen's voice buzzed back through the line. "Yes, that donation didn't come from the governor's office directly. It came from an offshore shell company based in Delaware, traced back through 3 fronts. But one of them shares a P.O. box with Senator Carl Whitmore's campaign committee." Catherine felt her throat tighten. Senator Whitmore, her old law professor's golden boy, the man who publicly praised her after her first internal corruption cleanout 6 years ago. A man whose nephew once served as deputy director at this prison. A man who'd advocated for more autonomous correctional control, code for privatized silence. "You're sure?" she whispered. Helen didn't hesitate. "Positive." Catherine ended the call and stood up. Her breath fogged the glass as she looked out the window. She was no longer fighting corrupt guards. She was in the middle of a political war. One mistake, and she wouldn't just lose her badge. She'd disappear. The door to her office opened. Daniel stepped inside, his jaw set. "News just came in. Barnes's van was found abandoned in a parking garage in Baltimore. No prints, but we found something else." He held up a tablet. On screen, security footage of a tall, suited man speaking to Barnes in a dim-lit corridor. The man handed him what looked like a badge. "That's not a prison badge," Daniel muttered. "It's government issue." Catherine took the tablet and zoomed in. Though the man's face was partially turned, the jawline and slicked-back hair were unmistakable. Senator Carl Whitmore's chief of staff. Her blood ran cold. "Why would someone like that risk being caught on camera helping Barnes escape?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. "Unless he didn't think we'd ever see the footage." Catherine set the tablet down and paced. Every step echoed like a countdown in her mind. She was now entangled in something deeper than departmental corruption. It was a web threaded through the veins of state power, and every move forward would mean exposing names the public trusted and people who could crush her with a single call. She returned to her desk, pulled out the old case file on the 2017 inmate deaths that had been ruled as accidental overdoses. There had been rumors even then. Women transferred suddenly, evidence missing, guards reassigned quietly. The warden at the time, Franklin Rourke, had resigned abruptly, citing health concerns. But Catherine remembered his eyes the day he left. Haunted, exhausted. She flipped to the list of corrections officers reassigned during that time. Her finger froze on the name halfway down. Lieutenant R. Barnes. He had been there too. A chill crept over her shoulders. Marisol was safe for now, under federal protection in a secure house with agents rotating hourly. But Catherine knew if Whitmore's people were involved, it meant this wasn't about one woman. It was about silencing every loose thread, and she had just become the biggest threat of all. The intercom buzzed. "Warden Monroe, there's a call for you on line 3. It's the governor's press secretary." Catherine picked up the receiver slowly. "Monroe speaking." "Warden," came a slick, practiced voice. "I'm reaching out regarding your press conference earlier. The governor's office is requesting you clarify your statements about political interference. We'd prefer you correct the record before it escalates." Catherine's grip tightened. "Are you threatening me?" A pause, then lightly, "We're offering you a way to walk away with your dignity." She didn't respond. "I'd suggest you accept the request. You have a career, a child, a life." Catherine's silence deepened. The line clicked dead. She didn't move for several minutes. Then she stood. She pulled the files into a secure case, locked them, and turned to Daniel. "Get the DOJ back on the line and call our media liaison. We're going live again." Daniel blinked. "Tonight?" "Tonight, before they have time to spin this." That evening, Catherine stood before the camera once more, but this time she didn't mince words. "I have been warned to walk away, to protect my career, my safety, and my future by staying silent. But the future I want is one where women like Marisol are not preyed on by the very people sworn to protect them, where prisons don't hide monsters behind polished names and smiling donors. She held up the business card and then flashed the security footage. This man, connected to Senator Whitmore's office, helped a known criminal escape federal custody. I have turned over all evidence to the DOJ, and I will not stop until every person responsible is named and held accountable. When she stepped away from the podium, the room was silent. Then the questions started. But Catherine didn't wait. She walked straight out the back exit into the waiting car. Helen sat in the passenger seat. That was either the bravest or most dangerous thing you've ever done. They're the same thing now, Catherine said. As they pulled away from the building, Catherine's phone vibrated again. A private number. She answered. A robotic voice crackled on the other end. You've made enemies, Catherine. You have less than 24 hours before we decide your replacement. The line went dead. She stared at the phone, then at Helen. They're coming, she whispered. And she wasn't sure if she meant the law or the wolves, maybe both, but the question hung in the air like fog. When they came, would they take her badge or her life? The city skyline bled orange as the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the prison compound. Catherine Monroe sat in a black SUV outside the facility, her badge burning hot in her pocket, her mind heavier than ever before. The threat she received earlier wasn't vague. It was specific, cold, and delivered like a statement of fact. She had 24 hours before they would replace her, and no one needed to explain what that meant. She had always thought her enemy was behind bars. Now she was realizing her enemy might have built the bars themselves. Inside the SUV, Helen was still on her laptop, fingers tapping furiously. I'm tracing the number, she muttered. Whoever sent that voice message masked it behind a military-grade relay. This isn't someone with a burner. This is someone with access. Catherine stared out the window. I don't need a trace to know who's behind it. Whitmore? And whoever pays Whitmore. The DOJ had gone silent since the press conference. Too silent. Daniel had sent 3 messages with no reply. Every time Catherine's phone buzzed now, it sent a jolt through her spine. They're not ignoring us, she said softly. They're deciding whether we're worth saving. Suddenly, Helen's screen flashed red. You need to see this. Catherine leaned over. A live stream from a small, independent media outlet had just started. A grainy video showed a man, Lieutenant Roderick Barnes, standing in a dimly lit room, hands folded calmly in front of him. I didn't escape, Barnes was saying. I was removed for my protection. He looked directly into the camera. And the woman accusing me? Warden Catherine Monroe? She's no hero. She's covering up years of misconduct, bribes, and internal abuse. I have evidence I'm prepared to release if anything happens to me. Helen froze. He's flipping the narrative. Catherine stood up, fury rising in her throat like acid. He's flipping it with help. Someone gave him that platform. Someone wants this war public and dirty. Just then her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She answered, expecting another threat. But it was a voice she hadn't heard in years. Catherine, it's Rourke. Her breath caught. Warden Franklin Rourke? The man she replaced. The man who resigned mysteriously in 2017 after multiple inmate deaths. I don't have much time, he said. They're watching me, but I saw your press conference. You've dug up something you don't understand. Then help me understand it. There was a pause, then, you think Barnes is a monster. He is, but he's not the architect. He's just a tool, like I was, like they tried to make you. Who are they? You already know, but here's the truth. If you push too hard, you won't end corruption. You'll disappear with it. I'm not afraid. You should be. They don't just erase people, Catherine. They rewrite them. The call ended. Catherine's hands were shaking now. Helen looked at her, worry deepening. Are you okay? No, Catherine said, but I'm angry enough not to care. Then Daniel called. Warden, we just intercepted a memo from the state office. An official reassignment order has been signed. You've been removed from duty, effective tomorrow morning. Catherine stared at the screen in Helen's lap, where Barnes was still talking, accusing, lying. Removed, just like that, but she still had tonight. And if they wanted her gone, what were they hiding that couldn't wait until morning? The lights in the prison flickered once, twice, and then steadied. Catherine had learned by now that nothing inside these walls ever flickered without meaning. She stood in the narrow surveillance hallway beneath the main cell block, arms crossed, her mind burning through possibilities. Above her, officers, some still loyal, some questionable, carried on as if nothing had changed. But everything had. By sunrise, she would no longer be warden. By law, she'd have no authority, which meant she had one night left to blow the lid off everything. Helen appeared beside her chair, breathless from running. "They're wiping records." Catherine turned sharply. "What?" "Inmate files, surveillance backups, transfer logs, Barnes's disciplinary reports, gone. Anything that could tie the abuse, the donations, or the senator's people to this place is being scrubbed." "Who has clearance to do that?" Helen hesitated. "Only someone from Central Command, or someone with your override codes." Catherine felt cold. "My codes haven't been used." Helen slowly pulled a printout from her coat. "They were, 30 minutes ago, from your ID." She didn't need to guess. Someone cloned me. And that meant someone on the inside, close enough to mirror her digital identity, was working to destroy the case before it ever saw a courtroom. She didn't wait. "Get Daniels," she said, "and bring a full log of everyone who accessed admin panels today. I want names, times, every keystroke." Minutes later, in the dim glow of the warden's private server room, they huddled around the only surviving terminal. An offline backup system she had commissioned herself 3 years ago, paranoid even then that something like this might happen. Helen pulled up the data. "There, look. Cloned logins came from the East Hall admin panel, same time as the surveillance wipes." Daniel's face darkened. "That's Officer Kenner's station." Catherine blinked. "Kenner, the rookie?" "No," Daniel said quietly. "Not anymore. He's been promoted twice since he got here. Fastest rise I've seen. And he was personally recommended by the department." Catherine's pulse pounded. "He's a plant." They looked at each other in silence. Helen said it aloud. "He's the inside man." Catherine turned toward the glass wall. On the other side, cell block C, where the worst stories had been buried, lay in eerie stillness. Somewhere inside that darkness, truth remained alive. "We're taking it all back," Catherine whispered. "Everything they tried to delete, we'll find another way." "But how?" Helen asked. "They've already locked you out. You're done in 6 hours." "Then I have 6 hours to act like I'm still in charge." Daniel looked at her, voice low. "You're talking about breaking into your own system, disobeying state command." Catherine nodded. "And I'm not asking. You with me or not?" Helen didn't blink. "Ride or die." Daniel offered a half grin. "Let's make some noise." They moved fast. Under the cover of routine shift change, Catherine slipped back into her office, gathered the original physical evidence, Barnes's envelope, the hidden camera footage, the governor's spouse's business card, and locked it into a plain brown briefcase. She handed it to Helen. "You'll drive this straight to DOJ headquarters in D.C. You don't stop. You don't answer calls. You don't look back." Helen nodded. "What about you?" "I'm going to give them something they can't wipe." Catherine turned toward the prison's broadcast room, normally used only for emergency alerts or system-wide lockdown messages. But with one click, it could stream to every TV, monitor, and terminal inside the compound. She was going to make sure every inmate, every guard, and every hidden eye in the prison saw the truth. As she walked down the dark hallway, her phone buzzed once more. A single text from an unknown number. "Too late. You should have stayed quiet." She didn't stop walking, but in the shadows behind her, someone else had started following. Catherine stepped into the old broadcast room, heart pounding so loudly it threatened to drown out every noise around her. The dusty console sat in the center like an unburied relic, unused, untouched, and more dangerous than ever before. If she did this right, she'd force the truth into the open before her authority was stripped away. If she did it wrong, they'd bury her deeper than the evidence. She closed the steel door behind her and turned the deadbolt. No turning back. She connected the drive Helen had encrypted earlier, one that held the recovered footage of Barnes, the illegal surveillance of inmates, the photos, the shell company transaction logs, everything. All of it was ready for broadcast. All she needed was power. The console flickered to life. Old prison announcements began to play silently in the background as she navigated the admin override. She was about to go live when a sound, a soft click. Catherine's blood went cold. She turned, slow and deliberate. There, in the corner, stood Officer Kenner. He didn't look like a rookie anymore. He looked calm, smug, too calm for someone in the presence of a woman holding the kind of evidence that could implode the department. "You shouldn't be here, Warden," he said, voice even. She didn't answer. He stepped forward, hands casually behind his back. "I thought you'd run by now, but you're stubborn. I respect that." "Who do you work for?" she demanded. Kenner chuckled. "It's not about names, it's about systems. Do you have any idea how much money you've cost people with your crusade?" She pointed at the console. "It's already uploading." He stopped walking, blinked. She added, "And there's a backup on its way to the DOJ." For a flicker of a moment, something shifted in his expression. Was it panic? No. Something else. Resignation. Then he smiled. "You think you're ahead, but you've already lost." Suddenly, the console screen glitched, scrambled, blinking in violent reds and greens. The footage she'd just cued vanished. Error. Upload failed. Catherine lunged for the keyboard. "No, no, no." Kenner stepped forward. "We've had control of this system for months. Every wire, every node. The moment you started uploading, we wiped the feed." Catherine's stomach twisted. "Then I'll do it again. On another system." Kenner's voice was almost gentle. "You won't get the chance." He pulled a gun from behind his back and leveled it at her head. The barrel looked huge. Too close. Too real. But Catherine didn't flinch. "Are you going to shoot me?" she asked, voice flat. "That's your plan?" Kenner tilted his head. "No, I'm going to detain you. You'll be charged with trespassing in a secure facility, misuse of federal systems, tampering with classified evidence." "You mean your evidence?" He grinned. "I mean what the papers will print." But then, a sound she wasn't expecting. A sharp metallic knock from the back wall. Kenner turned, startled. Catherine dove. The lights exploded into chaos as the emergency lock disengaged. The back door burst open. Daniel and two federal agents swarmed in. One tackled Kenner to the floor, knocking the weapon from his hand. Catherine gasped for breath, adrenaline flooding her chest like a storm. Kenner screamed, "You're too late! You don't understand what you've started!" Daniel twisted his arm behind his back. "Then why are you sweating, hero?" The agents dragged him away, still shouting curses and threats. The broadcast system was still dead, but the drive was intact. Catherine held it in shaking hands. Daniel looked at her. "We traced the override back here, saw he was alone, took the risk." She couldn't speak yet. Her lungs were still trying to catch up. "I'm not sure what's more terrifying," Daniel added, "that he had a gun or that he was so calm while holding it." Catherine finally stood, voice hoarse, "Because they promised he'd never have to use it." Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then looked up, face pale. "What is it?" Catherine asked. He turned the phone toward her. A breaking news headline lit up the screen. "Senator Whitmore found dead in D.C. apartment. Suspected suicide, investigation ongoing." Her eyes widened. She whispered, "Was it suicide? Or had the people behind all of this just cleaned house?" Catherine stared at the screen, her throat dry as dust. The headline glared back at her. "Senator Whitmore found dead. Suspected suicide." The words pulsed like gunshots in her skull. She barely heard Daniel's voice behind her, or the shuffle of agents taking Kenner away. All she could hear was the silence left in the wake of power. "It's too clean," she muttered, eyes locked on the screen. "Too sudden." Daniel nodded grimly. Same thought. They didn't silence him. They erased him. Catherine sank into the broadcast chair, clutching the still warm drive like a lifeline. He was going to crack. Or maybe he already had. Helen's voice crackled through the comms. "Warden, are you safe?" Catherine pressed the receiver. "Kenner's down. The footage was blocked. But we've got the drive. He had a gun. He was stalling." Helen didn't respond right away. Then softly, "That wasn't the only hit tonight." Catherine stiffened. "What?" Helen's voice dropped lower, like a whisper wrapped in ice. "Two federal prosecutors who reviewed the Barnes evidence yesterday, both in separate traffic accidents tonight. One in Maryland, the other in New Jersey. Same hour. Different states. Same cause. Brake failure." Daniel swore under his breath. Catherine closed her eyes. "This isn't about covering tracks anymore," she said. "This is a full-blown purge." Her voice dropped. "And we're next." For a moment, the room fell into stillness. The air was heavy with dread, not just of what had happened, but of what was coming. They weren't just pulling levers in the dark. They were fighting an enemy who'd built the entire machine. Catherine looked to Daniel. "Get the press ready. We need to go public. Outside the system, mainstream, viral, unfiltered, before we end up like Whitmore." Helen interrupted. "Wait, there's more. I found something buried in the old DOJ transfer logs. It's a list." Catherine's heart pounded. A list of what? Special transfers over the last 10 years, all from this prison, all female inmates, officially marked as deceased, but their death records, her voice shook, they don't exist. The room went ice cold. "How many?" Catherine asked. Helen hesitated. 47. Daniel leaned forward. 47 inmates? Vanished? Helen confirmed. "And you're going to want to see where the transfers went. They weren't routed to other prisons. The destination code leads to a private facility. Black site, hidden under a pharmaceutical research firm." Catherine felt the walls shift around her. This was bigger than corruption, bigger than politics. These women weren't just being abused or silenced. They were being used. "For what?" Daniel asked, horrified. Catherine didn't answer. She was already pulling her jacket on. She looked at the agents. "Secure the prison, full lockdown, nobody in or out. Kenner gets federal isolation. I want forensic analysis of every terminal." Then she turned to Daniel. "We're going to that black site." He hesitated. "You're stepping out of the law." She looked him dead in the eyes. "No, I'm stepping into the truth." An hour later, they were in an unmarked car heading north through the rain, Helen guiding them remotely. The coordinates pointed them to an innocuous office park, rows of polished windows and security guards who looked more military than corporate. "Are we doing this?" Daniel asked as they pulled into the lot. Catherine nodded. "We don't leave until we find out what happened to those women." But as they approached the front entrance, a black van pulled out from the side of the building. Its windows blacked out, plates covered. Catherine's instincts screamed. "Follow it," she ordered. Daniel spun the wheel, turning sharp into traffic. They tailed the van through 3 turns, then onto an open back road leading out of the city. The van picked up speed. "Too fast for a casual exit," Daniel muttered. "They're moving something, or someone." Catherine stared out the windshield. "God, don't let it be another transfer." Suddenly, the van veered down a side road and disappeared behind a gate. Daniel parked. They exited, running toward the woods that bordered the property. And then they heard it. A scream, faint but unmistakable, a woman's scream. Catherine turned to Daniel, eyes wide. "Are they still doing it?" she whispered. "Or did we just catch them in the middle of it?" They sprinted through the underbrush, branches slashing their faces, hearts racing in rhythm with the rising wind. Catherine's boots pounded the mud-soaked path as the screams grew louder, more panicked, human. Not distant memories, not echoes, real. Now, Daniel followed close behind, pistol drawn, scanning the shadows. The black van had vanished behind an electronic gate moments ago, swallowed by a forest-lined drive leading to what looked like a private facility, completely off any registered map. But they'd heard her. A woman, maybe more than one. Catherine shoved past a rusted fence panel and emerged onto a gravel access road. Up ahead, floodlights illuminated a cluster of low concrete buildings, soulless, windowless, and heavily secured. A line of guards in black tactical gear paced near one entrance. No insignia, no badges, just steel in their hands and darkness in their eyes. She ducked down behind a stack of pallets, motioning Daniel to take cover. "We need proof, video, names, faces. Otherwise, this disappears just like the others." Daniel's voice was barely audible. "What if they see us first? Then we don't walk out." They crept along the edge of the facility wall until they found a service tunnel, partially open, water trickling out. Catherine dropped into the darkness without hesitation. The tunnel stank of bleach and decay. Pipes lined the ceiling, echoing with every footstep. Then voices. Two men, arguing. "She wasn't on the transfer list," one snapped. "We had orders to move her," the other barked. "She's not your concern anymore." "Bullshit," the first voice growled. "This one's different. You saw what she did in Block C. They're scared." Catherine's pulse froze. Block C. That was Marisol's block. Was she here? Daniel's face had gone pale in the dark. He mouthed, "They moved her." Catherine pressed forward, hugging the tunnel wall until they found a small vent opening into a sterile hallway. And there, walking with two guards, was Marisol. She was alive, but her arms were zip-tied behind her back, her lips bloody, eyes glassy with confusion or drugs. Catherine's breath caught. "They took her from federal protection," she whispered. "How?" Daniel whispered, "Inside job. Had to be." They watched as Marisol was led through a heavy blast door. It sealed shut with a hydraulic hiss. Above it, a sign read, "Medical Observation, 03. Catherine didn't hesitate. She pulled out her phone, filming everything. The guards, the signage, the timestamp. Daniel leaned close. "We've got to get her out, but we don't even know what's behind that door." Catherine's eyes didn't move from the screen. "That's where they disappear people, and I'm done letting it happen." Then they heard the intercom buzz. "All personnel report to Holding Bay 2. Subject is unstable." A red light blinked over the hallway. Alarms pulsed low and ominous. Footsteps thundered. Catherine looked back toward the exit. "We can't stay here." They ducked back into the tunnel just as two more guards rushed by. In the dark, Daniel hissed, "If we leave, we may never find this place again." Catherine looked at him. "Then we don't leave empty-handed." They climbed into a maintenance shaft that led to a small generator room. Inside, Catherine hacked into the nearest terminal, sweating, fingers flying. She bypassed encrypted layers until she found surveillance logs. The screen flooded with images, dozens of women, cells, medical restraints, notes. Project Nova. And next to each name, a label. Status, inactive, except one. Subject 47, active. Name, Marisol Alvarez. Daniel stared at the screen, horrified. "They're experimenting on them." Catherine copied everything to her drive. "We blow this open tonight." But just as she yanked the USB out, a voice behind them. "I told you," the man said coldly, leveling a gun at her back. "You wouldn't walk out of this." It wasn't Kenner. It was someone worse. It was the former warden, Franklin Rourke, alive and pointing a gun at her head. Catherine didn't breathe. The sight of Rourke, once her mentor, now reborn as the executioner of truth, froze her spine. His eyes, sunken and cruel, were nothing like the man she remembered. He had once handed her the keys to the prison, called her the future. Now he stood in the shadows of a government-backed black site, weapon raised, face unreadable. "I thought you were dead," she said, her voice low, trying to stay calm. Rourke gave a hollow smile. "You thought wrong. They gave me a new life, one without public scrutiny, one where the real work gets done." Daniel moved slightly behind her, fingers drifting toward his concealed weapon. Rourke noticed. "Don't," he snapped. "I'm not here to kill you. Not yet." Catherine's pulse pounded. "Then why show yourself now?" "To make you stop." His eyes narrowed. "You're digging too deep. This goes beyond a few guards and a corrupt senator. These women, they're assets, test subjects, and the ones who survive, they're profitable. You're trafficking them? Daniel asked, barely containing his rage. Rourke's smile faded. No, we're enhancing them. Catherine's stomach turned. You're drugging them, breaking them, destroying their minds. You call that enhancement? We call it evolution, Rourke said simply. The program's been active for 10 years. You think Barnes was the first? He was nothing. Just a leash we let slip for show. Marisol? She's the only one who survived all 7 phases of the compound trials. Catherine's mind spun. You're saying this was never about control. It was about data, experiments. On prisoners, Daniel growled. Human lives. Rourke shrugged. Legally dead. No one misses them. Catherine took a step forward, defiant. I do, and I just copied every file you've been trying to hide. Rourke's jaw flexed. You won't make it out with it. Catherine's grip tightened on the USB in her pocket. Then you'll have to kill me. They stared each other down, decades of buried secrets coiled between them. The tension cracked like glass. Then, in the silence, an alarm shrieked through the compound. Red lights flashed across the walls. An automated voice echoed. Containment breach. Subject 47 has escaped. Rourke's eyes widened. That's not possible. Catherine's heart leapt. Marisol. She's still fighting, she whispered. Rourke turned to bolt toward the corridor, but Catherine was faster. She lunged, knocking his gun aside. It fired wildly into the wall as Daniel tackled him from behind. The impact sent the old man sprawling. Catherine grabbed the pistol, pointing it down at him. Rourke coughed, dazed, blood dripping from a cut over his eye. She's not the girl you remember. You think you're saving her. But what's coming out of that room isn't Marisol anymore. Catherine backed away, dragging Daniel up. We'll see for ourselves. They raced through the corridors, passing empty labs and shattered equipment. A door ahead burst open. Guards scrambled back, shouting, weapons drawn, but not firing. From the smoke stepped Marisol. She was barefoot, blood running down her arms, but standing tall, breathing, alive. Her eyes met Catherine's, and for a moment they flickered. Recognition, then something else. Power. But before Catherine could speak, Marisol looked past her toward the emergency stairwell and ran. Catherine shouted, Marisol, wait! But the girl was already gone, through the exit, vanishing into the woods beyond the facility. Daniel turned to her, breathless. She escaped. But where is she going? And more importantly, was she still herself, or had the experiments turned her into something else entirely? The forest swallowed Marisol like a shadow returning home. Catherine sprinted through the trees, lungs burning, twigs cracking beneath her boots. Daniel followed close behind, panting hard, flashlight beams slicing through the misty darkness. She couldn't have gotten far, he called out. But Catherine wasn't sure. Marisol wasn't moving like someone running from fear. She was moving like someone who knew where she was going. Branches snapped to their left. Catherine raised her voice. Marisol, it's me. You're safe now. No reply. They pushed deeper into the woods until they found a clearing. A rusted swing set stood crooked in the grass, left over from an abandoned park. A cold wind swept through, and in that eerie silence, they spotted her. Marisol stood alone by the swing, head tilted toward the sky, arms limp at her sides. She looked calm, too calm. Catherine approached slowly. Marisol, you're safe now. You got out. Marisol turned her head. Her eyes were no longer wide and innocent. They were, focused, alert, calculating. I wasn't trying to get out, she said softly. I was trying to see who would follow. Catherine stopped cold. What do you mean? Marisol smiled faintly. They said if I ever made it past the final phase, I'd be a weapon. But I don't want to be a weapon. I wanted to be the one who pulls the trigger. Daniel stepped closer. What did they do to you? Marisol's voice remained eerily steady. They taught me how to shut off pain, how to read people by the way they breathe, how to survive anything. Catherine's throat tightened. Marisol, I know you're scared. I know they hurt you, but that doesn't have to define you. Marisol looked down at her hands. They were trembling. I don't know who I am anymore, she whispered. You're still you, Catherine said, stepping forward. You're still the girl who learned to beat chess masters, who drew lions in the break room. They didn't break you. They just tried to bury you. Marisol's eyes filled with tears. For a moment, it was like the girl Catherine had known was still there, fighting, buried beneath the programming, the chemicals, the trauma. But then headlights appeared in the trees. A convoy of black SUVs rolled toward them, tires crunching the leaves. Daniel raised his weapon. Back up? Catherine shook her head. Too soon. Marisol whispered, They're not here for you. The vehicle screeched to a stop. Men in military-grade gear stepped out, faces masked, guns drawn. They didn't shout orders. They didn't hesitate. They moved like they already knew what to do. Catherine pulled Marisol behind her. One of the men stepped forward, voice muffled behind his mask. Subject 47, we are here to recover you. Comply and no one gets hurt. Catherine stepped between them. She's not going anywhere. This is federal ground now. She's a witness, not a weapon. The masked man ignored her. Subject, you have 10 seconds to comply. Daniel raised his sidearm. This is private property. Unauthorized use of force will be considered an act of aggression. The man tilted his head slightly. Then another voice crackled over their radios. Stand down! It wasn't from their team. It was from above. A helicopter descended through the fog, no markings, just a ghost in the sky. Ropes dropped, and a new group of men slid down, also masked but dressed in suits beneath the armor. Catherine recognized the style instantly. Government. Real government. One of them stepped forward and showed a badge. Department of Homeland Security. This operation is under our jurisdiction now, he barked. The mercenaries hesitated, then slowly lowered their weapons. Catherine exhaled, but it wasn't over. The DHS agent turned to her. We're taking the girl into protective custody. She's not a prisoner, Catherine shot back. The agent didn't blink. No, but she's also not a civilian. She's something else now. Marisol looked at Catherine, silently pleading. Catherine turned to the agent. If she goes with you, I go too. The man paused, considered, then nodded. Fine, but understand, Warden Monroe, once you step into this next layer, there's no coming back. Catherine looked over her shoulder at the trees, at Daniel, at the path behind her that was now fading fast. Then she turned toward the helicopter and asked the only question that mattered. What are they going to do to her in there? The helicopter rose into the mist, slicing through layers of silence as Catherine and Marisol sat side by side, one cloaked in secrets, the other carrying the weight of them. The DHS agents surrounding them remained quiet, their face and unreadable beneath black helmets and mirrored visors. It felt less like an escort and more like an abduction in plain sight. Catherine kept her hand close to Marisol's. The girl hadn't spoken since they lifted off. Her eyes stared ahead, hollow yet alive. The chaos of what she had endured buried just beneath the surface. Catherine wasn't sure if Marisol was clinging to hope or unraveling in real time. Maybe both. The lead agent finally spoke. We'll arrive at Site 7 in 10 minutes. Where is Site 7? Catherine asked. The man didn't answer. Catherine leaned forward. She's not your property. She's a child. He looked back just enough to be clear. She's an asset. The moment she survived the Nova trials, that changed. You've got clearance to observe. That's all. Marisol's head slowly turned. Her voice was soft but haunting. They'll put me back in the white rooms. Catherine looked at her. Not if I have anything to say about it. The agent said nothing, but his hand gripped his weapon tighter. When they landed, the base was buried into a cliffside, camouflage from air and land. Inside, the walls hummed with technology and coldness. Catherine was scanned, stripped of her phone, her USB, even her badge. She was just a woman now, nothing more. They escorted her through a thick steel door into an observation room with one-way glass. On the other side, Marisol sat in a white room, alone and hooked to a monitor. They'll run baseline scans first, the agent explained. Then neurological response tests. We want to know what Phase 7 did to her. Catherine snapped. She's not a lab rat. He looked at her, voice low. That girl's brain lit up patterns we've never seen. She remembers every face, every floor tile, every phrase Barnes whispered. Perfectly. Her cognitive retention is superhuman. She's a survivor, Catherine corrected. Not a weapon. The agent leaned in. That's where you're wrong. This wasn't just a prison. It was a crucible. And she passed. A monitor flickered. Marisol's vitals spiked. Her eyes darted to the glass, as if she could see Catherine. The screen blared red. Suddenly she stood, walked to the wall, and whispered something. The intercom kicked on, capturing the sound. They think you saved me, Warden. But I was never the one in danger. Catherine stared, stunned. What does she mean by that? She asked. No one answered. A tremor shook the lights. Monitors blinked. Security breaches, someone muttered. Is this a drill? Another agent asked. But Catherine knew better. This wasn't Marisol breaking down. It was her breaking out. A door in the lab blew open, unlocked from inside. Sirens wailed. Guards scrambled. Catherine turned to the agents. Get her out of there. But when the door burst open, it wasn't Marisol who ran. It was another girl, younger, smaller, and behind her, dozens more, hidden test subjects. Catherine's heart stopped. This wasn't one survivor. This was a generation bred in the shadows. Marisol had opened the floodgates, and the world had no idea what was coming. Everything Catherine thought she knew, every battle she'd fought, had only scratched the surface. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Smoke curled in the distance, rising from Site 7 like a final exhale from a beast that had ruled in silence for too long. Sirens had stopped. The guards had surrendered. What began as a covert facility to break people had collapsed under the one thing it couldn't contain: truth. Catherine Monroe stood on the edge of the helipad, the early morning light washing her face in soft gold. Behind her, dozens of girls, rescued survivors, sat wrapped in blankets, sipping warm drinks, surrounded by trauma specialists and federal investigators. Some stared into space. Others cried quietly. But they were safe. For the first time in years, they were truly free. And Marisol, she stood a few feet away, arms crossed, a small smile tugging at her lips. She hadn't run. She hadn't disappeared into the fog like Catherine once feared. She had led those girls out, unlocked the doors, disabled the controls, like someone who had finally decided to take her life back. Catherine walked toward her slowly. I thought you might vanish again, she said gently. Marisol shrugged. I thought about it, but I realized I'm not running anymore. They trained me to be invisible, but I want to be seen now. Catherine blinked away the sting of tears. You're more than seen, Marisol. You're heard, and you've saved more lives than you'll ever know. Marisol looked around at the girls huddled nearby. They were going to keep us in there forever, like ghosts. You brought them back to the world, Catherine said. That's something they can never take from you. Silence passed between them, the kind of silence that isn't empty, but full, of memory, of ache, of victory. Then Marisol reached into her pocket and handed Catherine a folded piece of paper. Catherine opened it slowly. It was a drawing, rough, shaky lines, but unmistakable. A lion, fierce and proud, standing in front of a group of girls. The lion's eyes were gentle, but its posture was defiant. Above it, in messy handwriting, was one word: home. Catherine's throat closed up. Marisol smiled. You reminded me what that means. A black SUV pulled up nearby. A representative from the Department of Justice stepped out, his face soft with humility. Warden Monroe? Catherine turned. Just Catherine now. He extended an envelope. They've cleared you of all charges, and they've asked if you'd consider leading a new task force, one that investigates unlawful detention facilities nationwide. She paused, looked at Marisol. Only if she's my partner, Catherine said. The DOJ rep blinked. She's 16. She's smarter than half your department, and she knows exactly where the cracks are. He nodded slowly. We'll make it work. Marisol's eyes lit up. Later, as the sun rose higher, Catherine sat with the girls and began reading their names aloud, one by one, and with Marisol beside her. It was a simple act, but one that made them real again. Seen. Heard. When she reached the last name, the youngest girl in the group, barely 10, wrapped her arms around Catherine's waist and whispered, "Thank you for finding us." Catherine knelt, hugged her tightly. "No, thank you for surviving." As the camera crews arrived, the media prepared to break the story wide open. Headlines would follow. Arrests, apologies, reforms. But in that quiet space, surrounded by survivors, Catherine didn't think about politics. She thought about the line in the drawing. And the roar that had finally been heard. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even in the darkest places, courage can light the way, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because more stories like this deserve to be told. And maybe one day yours will be next.